Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Recaps and Reacts with me, Sarah, where I talk about shows and movies that I like or that I'm interested in. If you like something like this, please considering subscribing to my channel. Please like this video, comment, tell me what your thoughts are about the show that we're talking about today, which is Rooster. This is actually on HBO Max. This is also another show that is created by Bill Lawrence. He's actually a co-creator. I forgot who the other gentleman is. Let me look very quickly. Yes, it is Bill Lawrence and Matt Tarsis. So if you don't know, Bill Lawrence is the creator of Scrubs and Scrubs, the revival. I'm also covering that right now. So I was interested in Rooster because I thought that Steve Carell, I saw he was going to be the lead, which Steve Carell I'm a big fan of. Love The Office. And also we have Phil Dunster, who is on Ted Lasso as Jamie Tart. I loved Ted Lasso. So I was like, oh, I saw those two and I was like, sign me up. So we only have one episode that's been out so far, just premiered last Sunday. So they're releasing episodes weekly on HBO Max. So today we're just going to talk about the first episode, the pilot episode. Let's just get into it. So I'm going to refer to some of the characters as actors right now because we don't know who the characters' names yet are, or we don't know what the characters' names are yet. So I'm going to refer to their actor name for, or yes, the actors, their actual name in real life first. So we're seeing Steve Carell. He is riding in a car, and then he walks into on the campus of Ludlow College with this other younger man, but they're walking on the campus of Ludlow College. As Steve Carell is walking with the young man, we see John C. McGinley. And if you don't know who that is Dr. Cox from Scrubs. So, yay! We have John C. McGinley in there. But anyway, Steve Carell is walking. He sees John C. McGinley with his shirt off. He has like some shorts on and he's just wet. He's staring at this at John C. McGinley, and then as he's staring in, he runs into the student that he's walking with, and he's like, "Sorry, but I was looking at this man." And the student looks, and he was like, "What man?" He was like, he was just, I don't know. He was like walking, and then he was just wet, and the young guys or the students like a wet man, and then he puts his headphones in and he tells Steve Carell that Professor Shepard told them to wait there. So Professor Shepard arrives and we find out she introduced herself or it says hi to Greg, which we find out that Steve Carell's character's name is Greg Russo. And the student's name is Eric. Eric leaves and Professor Shepard and Greg go and walk into the building. And then we also find out, because when they walk into the building, there is like a little board that says that Greg is speaking. So he is speaking to, I guess, Professor Shepard's class. So we cut to Greg reading a passage from his book in front of the classroom. We do find out that it seems the main character of this book's name is Rooster. So that's going to be pretty important because the show is named Rooster. So let's just all remember that. And then after this moment, there is a Q&A session. Or excuse me, after he finishes reading, there's a Q&A session. And the Q&A session, I'm not really going to talk about it, but it was a lot of funny dialogue in this moment that I will butcher if I try to explain. So you have to watch the show, but it's a funny moment. After the Q&A session, Professor Shepard and Greg go and talk to the president of the college. We find out that the professor of the college is John C. McGinley, and his character's name is Walter Mann. Walter tells Greg that he is a big fan of him. We also find out that the Professor Shepard's name is Dylan. So he excuses Professor Dylan and Greg and Walter, or Walt for short, go have a conversation. However, Walt tells Greg to wait, give him a 10 count specifically. and then come into his office. And Greg's like, looks at Dylan and he's like, why a 10 count? And she's like, I have no idea. And so Greg goes into Walt's office and Walt's like, that was more of an 8 count. And he says that because Walt is in just some shorts with no shirt. But he ends up staying that way anyway, I think. Does he stay that way? I can't remember. But anyway, they start having a conversation. Oh, I do want to mention before that conversation that we do find out there was like a conversation between Greg, Dylan, and Walt. And we find out that Dylan actually writes poetry. And as I mentioned before, Greg is an author of books. And Walt kind of mentions how Dylan has never written, or excuse me, Dylan has never read one of Greg's books, and Greg has never like read any of Dylan's poetry. And they're like, why are you like snitching on us like this to one another? But I just mentioned this moment because Walt or Walter Mann, the president, John C. McGinley's character, he's very quirky. He's a very odd man. I mean, I guess we kind of saw that when we're trying to figure out why this man is walking shirtless and wet on his campus. But he's going to be hilarious in the show. So, yeah. Anyway, Greg goes into Walt's office and he's like, that was more of an 8 count. He tells Greg, I know what you're thinking. Most presidents of universities are bookish and shut-ins, but this guy's jacked. And he tells him it's the hot sauna and ice plunge every day. He tells him it releases the brown fat. And that's what this episode is called. This episode is called Brown Fat. It's not the pilot. It's called Brown Fat. Greg asks Walt about his daughter, Katie, and how things are between Katie and her husband, Archie. So apparently they are 2 professors at Ludlow College. President Mann offers Greg a job. Greg is like, nah, I'm good. But he says, wait, think about it. Don't tell me until you leave, because I guess he's going to be there for a couple of days. And so he's like, tell me your answer before you leave. Greg wanders around to a classroom and you see a lady speaking, and it looks like she teaches art history. And we find out that that was in fact his daughter, Katie. They walk around college and they're talking, and Katie says, Dad, you didn't have to come and check up on me. And he's like, I didn't. I was speaking at your college today. And she says, they've asked you a million times to come speak here and you never have. And he's like, yeah, okay, I was checking on you. She says that everyone on campus knows about her and her husband, Archie. So we find out in this moment that Archie, like I said, who was another professor at Ludlow College, has actually cheated on her with a grad student. Yikes, scandal. She says she doesn't understand what happened, and one day they were normal and then one day they weren't, and here they are. She feels like everyone on campus keeps staring at her and that she's losing her grip on reality. At that moment, as soon as she says that, she pushes her dad, she pushes Greg in the bushes with her, and he's like, what is going on? And they're looking through the bushes and they see Archie, who is Phil Dunster. So Jamie Tart from Ted Lasso. So Phil Dunster, Archie, and the grad student, they're sitting together on the bench. And Katie says, so sarcastically, she's like, this is every girl's dream to watch her husband kissing someone else with their father. So that's bold on Archie's end. You gonna sit there and cheat on me and then do it in public at the same school, like where we both work at? Like, that is so messy, so messy. But anyway, we see Greg goes to the convenience store, and there is the student that was actually in the class where he was speaking about his book. And the guy has like all this beer and is like, man, I forgot my wallet, which come on, you ain't forget your wallet. You're probably not 21. I'm thinking in my head. And then Greg's like, oh, it's okay, I'll get it. And he pays for the beer. And so they go outside and he gives them the beer outside, and there is an officer coming up. And they have an exchange. And this was a funny moment that I'm not going to go too much into. Excuse me. But we do find out the name of the student that he bought the beer for is Tommy. And then I'm mentioning this moment because this cop that comes up, he's going to be here at the end of the episode. And I'm assuming he's probably going to be a recurring character in the series. And he's actually pretty funny too. So I just wanted to mention this moment. So the next scene, we see Katie walking her dog, and he has to poop in a specific lawn. So I guess this is the lawn that her and Archie, or this is the home that her and Archie used to live in. I don't know if he left. Yeah, no. I don't think so. I think this is like Archie's own home, or I'm not sure. Either way, she's walking their dog, and she goes and climbs into the tree to go spy on Archie because Archie's with the grad student. And at that moment, her phone goes off. Greg's calling her, and her phone goes off, and then she drops it, and then the dog starts barking. And Archie looks out the window and sees that Katie's in the tree, and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "Our dog only wants to poop in your yard." So we cut to Greg, who is at a bar on I guess it's like at some lodge on the campus. And the bartender is actually Blake from Scrubs. So it kind of looks like, they're kind of doing like the Ryan Murphy universe thing where they kind of just, kind of use the same actors in each show, which is kind of cool. But anyway, we see that the bartender is, I don't know his name in real life, but he's Blake off of Scrubs. He's the bartender. And so Greg is having a drink, and then Dylan comes up, and then she has drinks with Greg, and then they start shooting the breeze. Dylan asks the question, have you ever felt that you're surrounded by a million people and yet you feel so alone? And Greg says, yes, my marriage for 25 years. And Dylan says, oh, yes, the school's most celebrated alum, which is Elizabeth, which is Greg's ex-wife. Greg said when him and Elizabeth split up, so many people told him, those same people told him that they didn't make sense together and that she was way out of his league. And he said, for a while, I believed that. So they continue talking, and Greg walks Dylan home. Greg and Dylan are talking about Katie and Archie, and Greg is like, I need to go speak to Archie, but he knows that Katie will hate her or hate him for it. And Dylan says, she'll love you for it. She won't tell you that, but she'll love you for it. They arrive at Dylan's house, and Dylan invites Greg to come into her house. And Greg is like, what? He's like, listen, are you serious? Like, I'm flattered, but I'm like, you're so much younger than me. You're gorgeous. And he's just like, and she's like, okay. And Dylan's like taking the rejection. She's like, nah, it's cool. And he's like, no, like, really. He's like, I'm just really uncomfortable. And he's like, ask me again. And Dylan's like, it's cool. And Greg says, well, maybe we can just stand outside and we can talk. And she's like, no, I don't like talking to men who reject me. And Greg says, okay, well, just ask me again. Ask me inside for a drink. And then so she asks him again, and he rejects her again. And he's like, I don't know why I just did that, but I do weird things. And she's like, oh my God, just forget it. And she's trying to open the door to her house, like unlock her door, and she can't do it, which of course that would happen at this moment because she's embarrassed and she's trying to open her door. She can't. And then Greg is like, okay, well, take it easy. Calm down. Like, don't rush it. And she gets something and just breaks the glass on her door just so she can open the doorknob. And she just walks in and she like slams the door, and then Greg walks off. It was hilarious. The next scene, we have Archie and the grad student. The grad student's on her bike and said that she's going to the dentist, and he does like this was a weird situation, but he like pushes her off on the bike, and I was just like, this is weird. I don't know, like, I don't know if they're really trying to hit home like probably the age difference maybe between the two. I don't know, but yeah. But Greg has stopped by Archie's house. So Greg is talking to Archie, and we find out that Archie is a big fan of Tolstoy. He has the first edition of War and Peace in his house, Remember that because that's going to be very important in a few moments. But Greg asks why he cheated on Katie, and Archie's like, he says that he loves her, and he said he got lost. He said that they weren't getting along, and he dropped out for a bit, but then Sonny came along and made him feel better. And Sonny is the grad student. Archie says he wants to work things out with Katie, but because he still loves her, but he's not sure she's going to take him back. Or Greg says that he wouldn't take him back, but he should try to anyway. But he tells him that he needs to man the F up. And I don't want to say that word, y'all, because my mom still watches this channel, and I feel so weird cussing in front of my parents. So I know I'm a grown woman, but I'm still, you know how, some of y'all might know what I mean. Greg goes to Katie's house, and Katie's in disbelief that she went to go see Archie. He told Katie that Archie wants a path back to their house, and Katie is like, what am I supposed to go and do? Greg asks if she still loves Archie, and she doesn't say anything, and he knows that she still loves Archie. Greg then tells Katie that you got to fight for him. He said the biggest regret that he has splitting up from her mother is that he did not fight for her. And then he says, don't be a coward like he is or he was. Go see Archie, but be nice. And she's like, what? And he's like, you may say some things that you won't be able to take back. So I'm just saying. And she's like, whatever. And then he's like, but be kind. The scene ends hanging out. Katie asks Greg to chill and hang out with her. And he's like, of course I will. And so they hang out. Next scene is Walt and Greg in the sauna. The hot sauna at President Mann's house. We find out that Greg turned down Walt's offer for the job, the full-time job. Walt says that he's happy that things are working out with Archie and Katie because he was like, if this drama would have kept going on, I would have to get rid of one of them, and I didn't want to have to get rid of Katie. And Greg's like, why would you get rid of Katie? And he's like, I would have to because Archie has tenure and he has some kind of fellowship. And he's like, no one cares about that. Greg asks if Walt is married, and he says he is. He says his wife loves to travel and he hates to travel. So they compromise, and they do 2 months together, 2 months apart, intermittently throughout the year. And it works for them. And she's currently away at that moment, and he says she'll be back soon and he cannot wait. And Greg says, well, it sounds like you have marriage figured out. And he says, yeah, I do. Greg says when you get your heart broken, it's like being shot in the face and you can't bounce back. And he doesn't want Katie to have to go through that. So that's probably why he's urging Katie to go talk to Archie. Next scene, we see Katie go to Archie's house, and she just starts speaking, but Archie is trying to cut her off, and she's just like, shut up, because I want to get this out. She tells him that there is nothing that he can say or do to make her understand why he did the things that he did to her, i.e. cheat. But at the end, she says that she loves him and that they can get through this. As soon as Katie tells Archie that she loves him and that they can get through this, Archie says she didn't go to the dentist. And she's like, Katie's like, what are you talking about? And Archie says, she said she had to go to the dentist. She didn't go to the dentist. She went to the doctor. And Katie's like, okay. And he says that she's pregnant. Oh my gosh, y'all. What? This is only the first episode. And I was like, oh my gosh. So Archie done got the grad student Sonny pregnant. Ooh! And Katie, whew, Katie's livid. She's pissed. She is to the highest level of festivity. This girl is mad. And he says he just found out. And he said he had this whole speech prepared for her, but that's why he wanted to go first. And then she tells him to get out. Just get out. Get out. And he's like, but this is my house. And she's like, get out. Just get out. And he leaves. And then she just screams. And this is actually a really cool transition as she's screaming. we're cutting to Greg screaming because he's now in the cold plunge with Dr. Walt. And this was just a funny scene. I just wanted to mention it, but it was hilarious. So we go back to Katie and Archie's house, and she's just sitting there. And she looks over and she sees the War and Peace first edition that I mentioned earlier. She sees the War and Peace. She gets that. She puts it in the fireplace, sets it on fire, and she's enjoying it. But then there's no cover over the fireplace. So the embers are just flying out. And y'all, them embers flew everywhere. Ended up setting the house on fire, y'all. Mm-mm-mm. And the house burns down. So we find out because we're cut to a next scene where Greg is joining Katie and the fire department's there, everyone's there, and the cop from earlier that I mentioned outside the convenience store is here at this scene. And it is just, there's ashes, it's just a burnt house. And when Greg joins Katie, Katie's like, you just had to make me go talk to him. So as the cop is coming over to talk to Katie and Greg, Katie tells Greg, I was with you all morning. And he's like, what? And the cop comes over and he's like, what happened? And they have a different account of events. And the sheriff's like, the cop is like, y'all just stay put because I'm going to talk to y'all. And then that's the end of the episode. And I thought this was hilarious. I liked this show. I think it's it's hilarious. It's delightful. It's a nice little fun watch. So I enjoy it. So I will be locked in for Rooster. It's also, I feel like, a different light that I'm seeing, Steve Carell not Michael Scott. I've seen him in other roles, but yeah, I always like to see him in different roles. So I appreciate seeing him in this role. And Phil Dunster, he's humble in this series, because in Ted Lasso he was kind of a douchebag, but he did turn out to be a sweet person by the end of the show. But I like him in this so far. And John C. McGinley, Dr. Cox, or Walt, I like him in this too. He's hilarious. He's just an awkward, funny guy, but I like him in this. So all in all, this seems like a good show and I'm locked in. So next week I will be back to talk about episode 2 of Rooster, and we'll get into that. And if you liked what you saw today, please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you like things like this or want to see other things like this, because I'm going to be talking about a lot of shows and movies because there's so much coming out. It's insane. So anyway, I will see you guys next week. Take care of yourselves. Be safe out there. Bye.